Are you?
Hi, everyone. Okay, my name is Elaine. So thank you, Jack, for agreeing to do this and sharing the nuts and bolts of the AV industry. Especially, everybody's probably seen Top Gun, recently too, right? Yeah, such a cool industry. Yeah, so I actually knew Jack maybe, oh my God, 20 years ago at CMU.
Yeah.
Carnegie Mellon University. We were in different streams, but also in a master's degree, in interaction design, right? Yeah. And so just a quick background of Jack. So Jack is the UX manager at a Boeing Global Services Customer Experience team, right? And he's supporting like the DesignOps efforts for training solutions and digital aviation solutions. So he's going to tell us more about what he designs actually for Boeing flights. Okay. Jack has 20 years of enterprise experience, which is a special topic for today because we've been talking mostly of B2C UX, but now this is B2B, and I think it's quite unique, right? And has well over a decade of adjunct teaching, also at Carnegie Mellon as well, and other institutes, I think. Jack has designed for, many like software tools like Boeing, Lockheed Martin, Shell, Diamond Chrysler, Eaton, and also the US military. That's pretty cool. If you can share more of that later on, okay?
Absolutely.
He also co-founded IxDA Pittsburgh, which is where he's at now. It's on the East Coast. And I know Jack also is like the North America, organizer for IxDA Global, right? Yes, so maybe you can tell us more about that. So Jack, what do you do actually at Boeing as a UX manager? Can you tell us more about that?
Absolutely, yeah. So I am a UX manager. I manage designers at Boeing. We have, Boeing's a huge company, enormous. And one of the three main parts of Boeing is called Boeing Global Services, and that's the area in which I'm employed. And so within BGS, we have the customer experience organization, and that's where we are building out our design operations for all of BGS. And that covers everything from basically anything you can imagine logistically around air flight, right? So everything from the supply chain, right? So part sales, and inventory, all of that sort of thing. In terms of modifications to planes, maintenance, all of the maintenance activity. We have part of the organization called Digital Aviation Solutions, which is, we do a lot with analytics, things like, how much fuel are you saving or using during a flight. And then we have a whole training organization as well, training solutions. So, it covers a huge range of activities around air travel and aviation.
Well, can you just give us some context as to how many employees does Boeing have, and how many design, like UX people are in the organization?
I couldn't tell you how many employees Boeing has. Tens of thousands.
Okay.
But our organization, BGSCX, we have somewhere around 100 designers, researchers, and metrics analysts.
Oh, wow. Okay. And when does this culture of UX get integrated into aviation or Boeing?
So again, Boeing's a big company. So there are actually multiple groups that employ UX designers. Um, BGSCX is the largest of those.
Mm,
Um, and so we've made a real effort in the past year and a half since our group was formalized and stood up to really invest in DesignOps and try to build a world-class design organization within the company. Before that effort, you had a lot of individual design groups supporting, individual portfolios or products. Um, and so this effort is to really build a design practice across the organization.
I see. So, okay, maybe just so that people understand a little bit more, we know that Boeing's in Seattle. We know you're in Pittsburgh. I know you're
Yes.
hiring in Vancouver. Like, where are you guys like located really for the design operations?
Yeah, we're all over the world.
Okay.
We have a lot of people in Denver. We have a
Mm,
lot of people in Seattle. We have
okay.
a lot of people in Germany and Amsterdam and Switzerland. We have people in India. Um, so yeah, we are global. Um, Boeing Global Services.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. So you mentioned you invest in design ops. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that means for those who don't know or
Yeah,
haven't?
absolutely. Yeah, so design operations is everything involved in the way we do design, right? So everything from hiring, career paths, training, um, practices, methods, um, how we relate to the business, how we report our successes and our progress to the business, how we integrate with development, right? All of those things, how we manage our people. Um, if you go on Nielsen Norman Group website and look up Design Ops 101, they give a really good synopsis of what design is and what all it covers. Um, but yeah, it's basically everything that you do to make your design organization function.
Interesting. Yeah, it seems like it's a recent trend or phenomena. Like the word, even the word design ops, right, didn't exist more than 10 years ago, I think. Maybe last 5 years or something. Yeah.
Yeah, right. We can credit Dave Maloof, if you know him, with sort of the picking that name based on the DevOps term that was already in use
Uh,
and really popularizing it. And it's not that we didn't used to do design ops, we just didn't call it that, and we
mhm.
didn't have the formal practices in place around it.
Right, right. So how is working at enterprise UX like different from, you know, B2C UX, for example, like business to customer? Yeah.
Um, well, one of the things about it is that it's bigger, right? It's
Mhm.
it's huge and it's complicated. Not to say that business to consumer isn't or can't be, but when you get to enterprise UX, you're dealing with a lot more um, uh, sort of um, certainly a lot more red tape. You're dealing with a lot more bureaucracy. You're dealing with a lot of different organizations within a large company, and all of the politics that go with that, right? So for example, you know, how many of you working in B2C are using Figma, right?
Everyone.
Probably most of you, right?
Uh, yeah.
We are we are just on the cusp of getting Figma approved for use within Boeing.
Oh, wow. So what do you use? Like Illustrator and Photoshop?
No, we've been using InVision and
Okay.
Sketch because we got those approved a few years back. But
Uh,
there's Boeing takes security very seriously, right? And so there is a process to go through to get software validated and approved for use, and it takes a long time. It takes interacting with a lot of different departments within Boeing, and so it's very difficult to do, and we don't have there aren't clear directions or instructions on how to go about doing it, right? So we have somebody right now who's been working on that for well over a year, and figuring out what steps he has to take, who he has to talk to, and when that person leaves the company, who he has to go to next to get the support that he was getting from that person.
I
right?
see. So does it mean you need more soft skills if you work in enterprise UX?
Well, I don't know that you necessarily need more, but yeah, they're important.
Okay. What other differences are, like, why are you interested in this space? I mean, you've been in.
Because the problems are so complex and interesting. I don't want to throw shade on what anybody does. I have respect for any kind of design in any part of the industry. But personally, I couldn't see myself just going and working on a consumer facing app that at this point in my career wouldn't provide the kind of challenge that I'm looking for. There's just so much involved at an enterprise scale when you're dealing with everything from I don't directly work on software that's used in the cockpit, right? That's installed in a plane's cockpit. Completely different area, completely different part of the company, and different people work on that. But for example, right, the complexity that's involved there, the rounds of testing and approval that you have to get for something to be installed in the cockpit is just incredibly complex.
Right.
And in fact, one of the things that is done a lot today is to design software for iPad use, because you don't have to go through all of the levels of approval that to have something on an iPad that a pilot can use in the cockpit, that you would have to use software that's actually installed in the dashboard of a cockpit.
Yeah, I think the cockpit is one of the most complex interfaces, alive, like, 360, all these, buttons and stuff that pilots are trained to do, right?
Well, and if you look at, you can do a search and find images that compare cockpits the way they were, 10, 20, 30 years ago to the way they are now. The differences in the amount of physical controls and like actual screens, panels, displays. Really interesting to see that evolution. But again,
has it improved a bit, or?
Well, again, that's not my area of expertise. Really interesting, but that's not the space in which I work. We're still doing software that's used on desktops, laptops, tablets, phones, by pilots, by cabin crew, by maintenance, by people who are just supporting those activities in an office, training, etc.
What about like in the plane where you have the entertainment, movies and calling the air uh hostess and like, do you guys do that too? Or that's enough?
No, that would be something I believe that the airlines themselves are doing.
Oh, I
Or
see.
yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so what's the design process like, at Boeing? Is it any different from what we know?
Not really. I'm going to speak for BGSCX,
Yeah,
which is just one area of Boeing. You talk to somebody from a different area of Boeing, they're going to tell you something different, right? But we follow design thinking process.
mm,
Um, we've tailored it for our use. So onto the regular set of design thinking activities, we've added after test, we've added implement and measure because we think that it's important for design to be involved during the implementation of the applications, and that we're following up and measuring whether they're being used and whether they're being used successfully once a product has been deployed.
I see. And do you do that quantitatively or qualitatively when you
Of course, both. Yes.
both? Okay.
So right? So we want to be able to test, do usability testing with our software in a qualitative fashion. We also want to be able to track metrics against our software. Um, so, both customer experience metrics, so like NPS, customer effort score, things like that, as well as defining customer success metrics to ensure that our customers are actually being successful with what they need to use our products for.
Right. So you said NPS, do you mean, is it Net Promoter Score?
Net promoter score.
Okay. Can you explain a little bit about that to the audience who might not know what that is?
Yeah, very, very simple. It's a standard way of measuring whether your customer, your users, will recommend your product to somebody else.
Mm,
Yeah, and so it's a standard metric. It's used across the industry by a lot of different companies. So you can, by using that, you can sort of compare how your product is doing to other products, either similar or not similar to yours, because it's a standard metric.
so how does that work in enterprise? Because uh because the users are more like the B2B people, and but who would be a competitor? Like,
Well, when you say that, we have such a wide range of types of users. We
okay.
have users who are internal to Boeing, right? Where we're
Mm,
designing software that's used by other Boeing employees. We
uh,
have software we're designing that is used by airlines. We have software that is used by suppliers. So we have an enormous number of personas, across our portfolios that our teams are designing for. Um, so and so is it any different when you're designing for somebody who's internal to somebody who's external? Not really, not when it comes to a process point of view. And when it comes to measuring something like Net Promoter Score, even internally in Boeing, it's not like it's not like anything that we develop is free for anybody in Boeing to use, right? Boeing is so large that you sell your product to another part of Boeing, right?
oh,
So
so it's
so
like an
there's
internal consulting firm also, right?
yeah, so there is commerce happening between parts of Boeing. So knowing whether or not somebody is going to recommend your product is a valid thing to know.
But what other choices do they have? Can they use non-Boeing internally?
Sure, they can.
Really? Oh, okay, interesting. Okay,
Yeah, in a previous team I was with, we were competing against external commercially available products for a product that we were developing internally.
oh, okay. Because I thought Boeing is there's like who competes with Boeing, right? Yeah. So I didn't know that there would be other options.
Oh,
But
sure. Yeah,
which
there's
makes
always competition.
okay, which makes me very curious. Like how do you do user research? Like do you go out to interview people doing logistics and supply chain? Like how does that work?
Yeah, it's probably going to be just the same as you would expect in any other company. And it's going to vary from team to team within our own organization. Sometimes it's pretty easy to get access to our users. And we'll be able to just, have people who just basically go next door and talk to people, on the assembly line or what have you. Sometimes we have trouble getting access to our users for various reasons
Mm,
that would be familiar to anybody out there. I expect everything from sales wanting to own the customer contacts to well, what do I bill my time to if I'm going to spend time looking at your prototype, to just
oh, that's funny. Yeah.
yeah, no, it's they have a job to do, right? And
Yeah.
they're being paid to do that job. And so if they're going to take an hour out of their workday to review our software prototype, right? Who does that time get billed to? Then
So who does it get billed to?
well, that's the question, right?
Okay.
Does
See.
does it get billed to their regular work statement, even though that they're not working on that? Does it get charged to our group, the team who is developing the software, right?
Uh-huh.
Um, that's something that has to get worked out over and over again.
Right. So I'm curious, like now, because of the pandemic, everybody's working at home. Like how do you guys do user research? I mean, do you still have to do it in context of how people work and
We've like everybody, we've done a lot more remote interviews basically over the past couple years. We've hosted virtual design sprints, using shared whiteboard tools. Um, so yeah, a lot of virtual stuff has been going on.
how do you go around, understand the context though? Like, because
Yeah,
I
that's the
think
problem, right?
that
Is
that is pretty
because you
important.
don't get that from an interview.
Exactly. Yeah. Did you guys come up with some solutions to that or
No,
no? Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
no.
I,
I don't know that there's, I mean, you can, okay, so here's something from way back, years and years ago when I was doing work with Shell. This was before I was in Boeing. Um, we wanted to develop software that would support maintainers on an oil rig, right, in the middle of the sea.
mm,
Um, we wanted to be able to go and observe them doing their work on the rig, right? Get the in context observations. This is
yeah.
going to be extremely important to understand the conditions under which they were working.
Hmm.
But it turned out that to actually be able to go onto an oil rig, you have to have like a month's worth of training.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we would have had to have gone through a month's worth of training to be able to actually go on an oil rig. So what did we do? We got somebody in Shell who was working on the project with us, who was already trained, and we explained to him exactly what we wanted him to do, gave him the questions we wanted him to ask. He went, with a video camera. He did all of the follow along with all of the different personas that we were researching, right? So there are ways you can get around it if you, but it's not easy.
It's like, it makes me think of Tom Cruise and having the whole, acting crew like go through training before they can film on the plane, right? The fighter jet. Interesting. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm sure. Like, I think like designers who just came into our industry these 2 years probably doesn't even know that user research is not just online interviews, because it got all canceled, right?
Right.
And we're so used to remote interviews, like they don't know that in context, ethnography type is also important. It's just that people are very allergic to meeting strangers nowadays.
Right. Well, and now that we've been doing it this way for so long, there's costing going on site, right? If it's somewhere you have to travel to, right? And it can be fairly expensive. So, how are we going to convince people again that we need to do that and we need to spend that money? It's so important. It's something that I'm continually trying to reinforce to our designers is that being there in context, being able to observe, you learn so much that you're never going to get from an interview because nobody's going to think to mention it to you.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. It's a different world after the pandemic, really. Okay. So especially in, enterprise UX, what kind of design skills, or what kind of skills of talents are you looking for?
Again, I don't know that it's going to be that different. We're looking for people with research skills. We're looking for people with prototyping skills. We're looking for people with front-end development skills. We're looking for people with visual design skills. We're looking for people who have experience actually doing user interface design. And it depends on the position that I'm hiring for, the team that I'm hiring into, what skills do they already have? Where are their strengths? Where are their weaknesses? What do they need right now in terms of the project work that they're planning on doing for the next year or so? And then, figuring out, okay, so in this case, we want somebody with really strong research skills. We're not going to worry about visual design. If they have some prototyping skills, great, but the team really needs research right now. So that's what we're going to try to get. In another team, maybe I really need somebody who can do it all. That we need a general UX designer who can do the research, design, build the prototype.
Okay, so the skills that you mentioned sometimes in job descriptions is 4 different roles. Sometimes
Right.
It's all one. How would you advise, newcomers or people who want to get into the industry, especially in enterprise? Should they be focusing on one area to make themselves an expert of it, or more general, like full stack?
What I would say today is that you need to do what you are interested in, right? You need to do what you love. And there is, the UX is a big enough industry now that you should be able to find somewhere that needs, if all you want to do, if you want to focus on research and that's what you want as your specialty and you deep dive on that and you're really good at it, you're going to be able to find a place that needs a researcher and doesn't need you to do the other parts. If you like all of it and you want to be a generalist and be good at the whole process, there are places that need that too.
Okay.
So it's really up to where people's interests lie today, I think.
Yeah, I think the most common complaint that we've heard from some of the junior people is like the job descriptions are unicorns, and then they go, well, I can't possibly know all that, like when I'm just first starting.
Yep.
So how do they apply or not apply? Like, what should they do?
Well, so here's the thing is that most job descriptions that I've seen today are very poorly written.
Mm,
They just list a bunch of UX skills without really telling you exactly what you're going to be working on at that particular company. Most of the job descriptions I see today, you could pick up from one company and take over and drop on the next company, and you wouldn't know the difference because
which is
it's
probably what
just
they did. Copy and paste.
true, right?
It's
Because they're just saying, oh yeah, we just need a UX person and UX people have these skills. What I do when I'm writing a job description is I put details about exactly what types of products they're going to be working on, what that work is going to entail, so that I'm getting people who are interested in the position that I'm hiring for, right?
right.
That's what I want.
Okay. So what kind of skill sets are missing in the market right now? Like if you've interviewed a lot of people?
Well, I'll tell you what I'm getting a lot of right now
Mm.
are um, are people who have gone through a certificate program and have no work experience, right? They've come from some other industry entirely, and that's the only UX experience they've had is what they've gotten in that certificate program.
You
And then
mean the
they,
8 month boot camps, right?
yeah, like, right, like, Google's certificate program, um, General Assembly. Okay, I'm
Are you back?
back.
All right. But they have tons of questions for you now
Okay.
while you just stepped out. Okay, so shall we have Gregory and Jasmine lead the questions and ask the people to
Sure.
A good
Yeah.
idea.
We can start with Daniel. You have a question?
I do have a question. So how it works is I type my question, and if it's my turn, I get to turn on my camera and ask the question to Jack face to face. Let me just find my question. My question to Jack is, do you see any challenges when you are running a remote workshops for user testing? I remember you say yes, but I'm curious to know any pros on running it remotely versus what are the cons of running it remotely in such a big company?
Yeah. So I've actually talked with our lead facilitator at length about this. We have our lead facilitator, Dave Farrow, has been doing design sprints. He had done a bunch of them before the pandemic, in person, multi-day events. And then during the pandemic, ended up having to do several of them that were completely remote, completely online. And what he found is that he had to shorten them. They had to be much shorter. They couldn't run an entire day even. So he'd end up doing a partial day, still do maybe 2 days for the workshop, but only partial days, and give a lot more breaks because people just didn't have the stamina to sit there on a screen participating for that long.
Zoom fatigue.
Exactly. Yeah, it is just really fatiguing. And it's harder to keep people focused. It's really easy if you're sitting there on your computer to be, looking off at your email over here and your direct message over here. Whereas if you're in the room and everybody's put their devices away and you're focused on the workshop, then everybody's engaged. So it's a lot different in that way. And then just we've used like freehand boards in InVision to facilitate those, which work pretty well. So virtual whiteboard tools are a real pro, I would say, of it, because you immediately have a record of everything that's been done in a shared space that everybody can access after the event, rather than having to spend a lot of time digitizing what's been written on whiteboards and tablets and post-it notes and all of that.
What
So
whiteboard
that's one
tools?
thing.
What
What's
whiteboard
that?
tools do you use? What whiteboard tools do you use?
Primarily Envision Freehand, because that's the tool that we have in-house already. Like I explained earlier, getting another tool like Miro approved would be really difficult.
I see. Yeah, I would think Post-it 3M, the company, might have their sales tank right after the pandemic, because the whole industry moved like online, right?
Yeah, that would be an interesting point to see their sales.
Okay.
So Jack, my follow-up questions will be if running a remote workshop has pros and cons at the same time, would candidates with experience running remote workshop, user testing, or user interview be benefit for companies or your teams like that? Would that
Yeah,
be
sure. Yeah, one of the positions I filled recently, one of the things I was looking for was somebody with facilitation skills. I wasn't looking specifically for virtual facilitation skills. I just wanted good facilitation skills. I think if you have good facilitation skills in person, that's going to carry over and help you to do it virtually as well. So I'd care more just about the skills in general than whether it's specifically in person or virtual.
All right, that's a very good advice. I think we should all take note to that facilitation skill. Thank you so much, Jack.
Yeah.
Next, we have a question from Samantha.
Samantha.
Hi, Samantha.
Oh, yeah, hey, I'm here. Sorry, I wasn't sure if I had to jump in or not.
Great.
Yeah, no, just if possible, I'd love to hear an example of a product that you're designing, Jack, internally, where you're competing against external products. So I thought that was really, really interesting.
Okay. So please excuse me if I speak generally, because I don't want to accidentally divulge any information that would be considered proprietary.
Yeah, totally understood. Thank you.
Yeah, but so let's take, for example, a tool that's used to author author content for like maintenance manuals or for training content, right? Where it's a software tool that you're using to take written content, put it into a standard XML based format that is then able to be delivered through some other tool to say a maintenance worker on the flight line on an iPad, so that he can go through a maintenance procedure at a plane, right? It's a complex product, and you might think, well, that's kind of a niche sort of thing. How many customers could there be for that? What would the competitive landscape for that be? But there is one. There are companies out there that are focused specifically on that and developing tools for that purpose. And so, if we have a team inside of Boeing who has a product for that purpose that is being developed within Boeing, being used within Boeing, but also being sold to external customers, right? And there are competing products on the market, then some other team in Boeing is going to be looking and saying, okay, we have this product right now. There's this product over here. which one's better, which one provides the features that I need, which one is being developed more efficiently, which one costs more, right? It's just the same, there's no mandate that says that this team within Boeing has to purchase a product that's being developed within Boeing. They can say, no, this one by this company over here is going to be better for our needs and more cost effective for us. So it's just the same as competing in any other environment.
Next question.
Next we have Judy.
Hi.
Hi, Judy.
Hello.
Yeah, we can
Hi.
hear you.
Hello.
Your questions on corporate buy-in?
Yes.
Okay.
So often it's really difficult to propose a change to an existing product. First, like it's working, it's fully functional, but as UX designer, you find out there are like workflow potential improvement to workflow, but that doesn't really provide extra visible significant value to the customer. So you sometimes you have to reach an internal alignment on the level of investment the company is willing to put in to make this proposed change, UX change.
Yeah.
Because it requires a substantial amount of resource and effort, even just to do a POC.
Sure.
So my question is, what level of detail, like research data, do you think is enough to bring to the internal stakeholder for a buy-in decision? And what type of data do you usually provide?
Yeah, it sounds like in a situation like that, you need a cost benefit analysis. And maybe you don't consider that to be a UX term or a UX thing, but you have to show that, yes, this is an improvement to the product. It's going to benefit the users in this way. And because of that, right, they're going to complete their tasks this much more quickly, and that results in saving this much money, right? So you're looking at, okay, well, how much does that worker get paid per hour? How many hours are they saving, right? How many workers are there doing that task? How many times do they do that task in a month or whatever, right? So you've got to get that kind of data to make your case that, yes, it is worth putting in the investment to make this change.
So it's really educating, your colleagues internally, the non-designers too, right?
Yeah.
Mm. How do you do that? Like, just to drill in a little bit more, how do you train the non-designers in your organization as well?
Well, that training non-designers, I guess I wouldn't so much call it training as familiarizing, with the benefits of design. Yes, that's an important part of DesignOps.
Okay.
Our next question is from Emily.
Oh, hello.
Hi, Emily.
I've got a few questions here, but I'll start with one I think that tails off nicely from that last comment around kind of training designers. I have a question here around your thoughts on research or design democratization within
Yes.
enterprise organizations. So, is there an interest in kind of having other people within the organization doing design thinking or testing or research themselves? And if so, how? And if not, why?
Yeah, absolutely. I believe that the more people understand design, the easier it's going to be to argue for design, to get to demand good design. because it's not just going to be the designers who are demanding it, right? The more people who truly understand the benefits of design, the better off you're going to be as a design organization in the company. You won't have to fight all the time to do good work.
Yeah, cool. And just further to that, so the verse, like there's kind of a tension between kind of understanding the value of it in order to, you know, it be more embedded and have better ownership within the organization. But what about actually some people doing design themselves, like actually being involved in prototyping or, you know, product is testing themselves? What do you think of that?
Yeah, you know, you should always be trying to involve members of your development team, product owners, architects, business analysts, right? Whoever it is that makes up your team. Hopefully, you know, you can expose them to some of the usability testing you're doing, so that it's not just telling you, oh, the users had a problem with this. They see it for themselves, right? When everybody has an understanding of what you're doing, right, then they stop questioning whether what you're doing is of value, right? They've seen it, they believe it. And the more you get everybody involved in the what we consider to be the design activities, right, the more ownership, right, they have of the results of your design, right, because they helped.
Yeah, absolutely. And another question I have here was around leveraging specialist knowledge. So I can imagine, you know, a lot of your users have very specific skills and have very like, you know, probably quite detailed needs. And so I wondered how you bring some of that specialist knowledge into the design process. And I suppose my assumption that I'm bringing to this question is that often those real you know, really specialist subject matter experts can often jump straight to straight to solutions, or they can kind of stagnate the process a little bit. So, you know, how do you deal with those types of challenges?
Yeah, sure. All of that is true. So one, make sure that you're not just relying on one expert, right? You should have multiple sources of the data you're gathering. So, you know, we have subject matter experts within our teams or within other teams within Boeing that that we rely on to get feedback when we can't always get to the actual users, right? But they have the domain knowledge, they work with the actual users, and so sometimes we have to rely on them rather than the users. But we always want multiple people so that we're cross-checking the information we're getting, and we're not running down some rabbit hole because this one person has this passion for this particular problem that they really want to solve, but may not be a universal thing, right? So I've been burned by that. I'm speaking from experience.
Yeah, and it can be tricky, right? Because sometimes those internal SMEs are, you know, they're very smart, they're very intellectual, they
Absolutely.
have really strong opinions, and you really want to listen to them, and sometimes they can have huge influence in that process. So yeah, I really like your suggestion around making sure that you really broaden that pool.
Yeah.
Cool. And I've just got one last question here, because I think we've already covered my other question around kind of competitor in-house versus in-house products. But the last one here was around getting visibility over projects happening within the organization that might impact your own team's outputs. And that's because I can imagine that perhaps silos are a big issue within
level organizations
like Boeing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Boy, what advice can I give there? You've got to talk to people. Um, you've got to try to build bridge. I I always consider designers to be the bridge builders on the teams, right? They're the ones who are motivated to really reach out and try to connect with whoever it is that they need to connect with to get the information that they need to make their product great. And so bridge building is it's actually um, one of my primary goals in my position currently is building those bridges across portfolio teams, getting them to see that, you know, they need to be interacting with each other, and learning from each other, sharing what they're learning with each other. Yeah, silos are a big problem.
Oh, I just want to drill in more about the democratization of, design and research within enterprise. I think right now in the community, there's a debate between, do you need to go to design school for design, or like anybody can do design? But if anybody can do design, then is a designer a professional? You know what I mean? Of course we want more people to understand design, but where's the line drawn? Because we don't need a license like pilots or lawyers.
Right.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, big debate. I've seen all the stuff that Jared Spool has written and Alan Cooper has written, and you know, I don't want to get into that kind of fight. But what I think is that anybody can participate in design, right? Anybody can participate in design, and we should try to include people in the design process. But to do great design, you need to have people who are trained and experienced in the design process, in design methods. And so if you don't have somebody like that leading it, then I don't think you're going to end up with something that's particularly great, because we've seen that time and time again in products that are not designed with by design teams.
Okay, great.
So everybody can cook, not everybody's a chef.
That's a really good analogy. Yeah, especially if you've gone to a 3-month cooking school and think you can go to cook at Michelin restaurant, right? Yeah. Okay, what's the next question?
Next one's from Crystal.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, okay. So I have a question, like it just came to my curiosity, like how does an enterprise like Boeing this big decide on what product to do? Because there's so many complex problems, like you said, then who makes a decision of, hey, like we need to solve this problem and let's come up with a product to solve it? Like who makes the decision? Because there's so many problems every day in a big enterprise like Boeing.
Yeah. And Boeing is, I mean, we've got teams out the wazoo, right? It's a huge organization. So who makes the decisions? Well, product owners make the decisions, product managers make decisions, portfolio managers make decisions, presidents and directors and right, designers make decisions. Everybody's making decisions. Yeah, there's a hierarchy of who gets to make a decision over somebody else, but ultimately, hopefully, if your team is functioning well, your team is making the decisions, right? It's not one person who's making a decision, it's the team based on all of the research you've done, all of the data you've collected.
So are there times where suddenly somebody top like be like, let's do this, and then the team still have to do it.
Sure. Yeah.
Regardless.
Yeah, that happens.
Oh, okay. That's good to know.
You're not alone.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. Thank you for answering.
Yeah, no, it's keep fighting the good fight. It you know Teams are going to make better decisions than a single person, always.
So are there any things that you guys have done effectively to kind of like encourage, not from top up, but like top down, but like, the team effectively inspired to make better decisions?
Yeah, provide data to back up what
Mhm.
you're trying to convince people of, right? If
Oh,
somebody needs to be convinced to make the right decision, provide the information, show them.
fight the battle, right? All right. I'm good.
Our next question's from Daniel.
Oh, I think Samantha went ahead of me, and right, Samantha, you would love to hear more conversation about the bootcamp candidates. Was that true?
Yeah, that's right. Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically it. That's just where the conversation was before we got disrupted by some technical issues. So I'd love to hear what you were going to say about folks who are coming from other industries with like boot camp or certificate experience.
Okay, right. Yes. I was saying that, so I've gotten a lot of resumes of people who have just gotten a certificate, have no other design experience at all, right? And they're applying, and to be clear, this is for like, say, a level 3 position out of 5 levels, where level 1 is entry level and level 5 is your senior person, right? So if I'm hiring a mid-level person at a level 3 and I'm getting resumes for somebody who has done a 6-month certificate course, and all they have to show in their portfolio are the projects from that course, and that's all the experience they have, that's not a level 3 designer, right? That's entry level. So if you're a designer with that level of experience, don't apply for a level 3, a mid-level position. Find an entry-level position. So that's what I'm seeing a lot of right now.
It seems like there's a unclear delineation of the level of skills in the industry.
Yep.
Especially some of the boot camps, they're like, oh, get a 6-figure salary after a 3 months course, right?
Exactly.
People think that they can jump right into 6 figures.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no, and recently, just on LinkedIn, like even this week, go on LinkedIn and search user experience United States, like JP Morgan VP levels. They're like 10, 20 postings. And a VP level is what, 5 to 10 years experience?
Well, so this is something interesting that since the pandemic, because of so we have a huge number of entry-level people trying to get into the field. We had a lot of mid-level people leaving their jobs over the pandemic, right? Just like any industry, we had a lot of people leaving their jobs. Hit UX harder than any other tech position, according to LinkedIn data.
You mean it's the Great Resignation, where people kind of got enlightened and then they went to surf or something? Is that?
It's exactly that. The Great Resignation, people leaving their jobs, looking for something else, right? There was UX got hit hard by that. You can find the data online. And so most of the job postings then have been for those mid-level positions, right? And it's been really hard to find senior level positions, really experienced positions. So really difficult to find mid to high level experience, and the market's flooded with entry level.
Yeah. Can you, so why are employers offering training and internships to bridge these entry level people into mid-level, or?
Well, see, here's the problem though, right? If you're trying to fill positions that your people just left, right? If you had a whole bunch of mid-level people just leave, you don't have time to train up an entry-level person to replace those people, right? You need people who can come in and get up and running with a minimum amount of time, right?
Right.
So that's the perfect storm that we're in right now.
Wow. Yeah, it's the job descriptions are so strange nowadays, like senior level 2 to 3 years experience, or 3 to 5, right? That's the description. And you're like, well, then if senior is 3 to 5, what's a junior level, right? Like,
yeah, and so
what's
that's what hiring entities have had to do. They've had to reduce the amount of experience they would regularly require to get those mid-level to senior level people, because there's a scarcity.
But then are hirers like yourself willing to accept senior level people, but changing from another industry, like flight attendant, or who have the soft skills maybe, but not the hard skills necessarily?
Well, but can somebody like that step in and design and run a user research project? I don't think so, right?
Yeah, it really is the perfect storm.
Oh, thanks. And just quick follow-up question. Are you able to speak to why you think like the Great Resignation or whatever hit the mid-level UX folks most? I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on that.
That's a really good question, and I probably don't have a great answer for it. But I would say it probably didn't affect the senior level people as much, because most senior level people are probably pretty happy where they are. I can tell you, I'm not looking for a job right now, right? I am doing what I feel called to do and getting a lot of job satisfaction from it. And they've senior people, they've paid their dues, they've put in their time, and they've made they've fought, and they've made a place for themselves. So mid-level people aren't there yet, right? So they're still looking. They've got to, I want higher pay, I want a better position, I want more respect, I want, right? Whatever it is that they're looking for that they're not getting in their current position, or just seeing, grass is always greener, right? So I just think there's a lot of that going on.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah.
Can you go back to Daniel?
Oh, right. My question to Jack is, I really like the idea of having that data, analyzing the cost and benefit to the stakeholder to fight a good battle. Usually, when you talk about defining a successful metrics, I would like to know more about it. Like how do you come up with the metrics and define whether this is a successful metric before you even conducting a interview or user testing?
Okay, good. So so let me start by saying that there are too many teams out there that the definition of success is that they delivered the product, right? We got our release out, right? Success, right? but somebody's going to be using that release, and they're going to be trying to get their work done with that release, right? They're going to be trying to meet their business goals with that release. And so your release isn't actually successful. You don't know that it's successful unless you know that your users, your customers are successful using it, right?
Mm.
So you have to have an understanding of what your users' processes are, what their workflows are, what are their goals in using your product, right? So if they have a workflow through your product, and there's an end state to that at which they are successful in whatever task they're trying to complete, right? How can you measure that in your product, right? If you're tracking analytics, right? Click-throughs, page views, all of that stuff, right? If it's this button or this return of a call from a server is the thing that says, yes, they completed their task successfully, right? Then are we tracking that? And are we measuring to make sure, oh yeah, they're doing that, and that's happening X number of times a day or a week or whatever. And so now we know, yes, our customer is successful. You've got to start with a hypothesis, right?
Right.
Determine how you can collect the data that's going to prove or disprove your hypothesis.
Mm. And then use the hypothesis and the first understanding the user flow, and then based on the hypothesis, and try to get everybody work towards the same goal, even the engineers, they're from another department or not.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
like-
So if you collect your metrics and you say, you know what, they're not making it through this process, this sales funnel, or whatever it is, they're not completing this task successfully. Well, okay, now we know that they're not doing what we expected them to be doing, but we don't know why yet. And that's then where the qualitative work has to come in, and you've got to go out and do the research to find out, well, why not?
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Yeah. Next question, please. Thank you, Jack.
Next one's from Kwani.
Hi. I guess my question kind of aligns with what Daniel just said, but the initiative from Crystals, it's on alignment. So I was wondering, how does Boeing keep everyone aligned? Because I'm assuming there is a lot of teams cross-functionally, and even if someone is onboarding just for the first time, you kind of have to go through that spiel again on letting them know what our goals are, what the product pipeline would be. So I was just wondering, what kind of strategy does Boeing has in place in terms of like what kind of meetings and conversations you have in terms of town halls maybe, or all hands, and how often do you have them? And if do you think there needs to be any improvement there?
Yeah. So yeah, we have all hands meetings. We have all hands meetings at the Boeing level. We have all hands meetings at the BGS level. We have all hands meetings at the DAS level. We have all, right. Again,
Yeah, so
we're
many.
talking about a huge company, so there are multiple layers of this thing going on where leadership is passing down the vision and the priorities and the direction, and then each next subset level of the company has to take that and say, okay, this is what this means for us, and now we need to relate that to our people within this part of the organization. So yeah, that's constantly going on.
And in your experience, has there been any pushbacks in terms of the content or context that's been put out there? Like the all hands happened, and then maybe 3 months later something changed, and then you have to go back again and talk about the same thing, or you can change the context.
Sure. Yeah, that happens. I mean, like I know I've said this many times, but Boeing is an enormous company. It's like a whole bunch of companies rather than one company. We talk about one Boeing, and we try to, have that unified vision, unified direction, but it's really hard because the work is so broad and varied. So for a message from, the CEO to be relevant to somebody who's down in the trenches, right, with all those levels of management and so forth from one into another, there has to be translation and contextualization of those kinds of messages as it comes down through the management chain. So yeah, there are practices of, making sure that the managers understand what is going to be communicated to their teams before the all hands meeting, right? So that they can prepare to carry that message down within their organizations.
Thank you.
The next one's from Christian.
Hi, thanks, Kristen. Thanks, Jack, for this conversation. I was just curious what resources you would suggest or you found most helpful for learning how to design for complex systems.
Okay. Yeah, great. So the Rosenfeld media books, all of them, the entire library, some of the best books on UX and design that have been published. There are a lot of, well, I guess specifically for complex systems. Yeah, I don't think I can cite one single resource that I would really recommend for complex systems. I think what really helped, I mean, there's a lot of literature out there about like systems thinking and so forth. I can't say that I've read much of it, but there's a lot of good literature on systems thinking if you want to explore that area that really gets into complex systems and how to think about them, how to design for them, or with them in mind. But I don't know any specific titles offhand.
Thank you.
And then Emily, you had another question?
Yeah, cool. So I was just kind of furthering to what Kwani was talking about in terms of all hands meetings and things like that. I was wondering about how you share design outcomes or design work at Boeing with the wider organization. And then another one around there is around how are user insights shared and stored?
Okay. Great questions. And I'll probably disappoint you here, but so to go back to my introduction, I probably didn't state outright that BGSCX, my organization, was started January of 2021. It was formed out of a design organization within part of BGS that was doing really well, had really good leadership that was recognized, and they said, okay, why don't you take this practice, this pattern, right, and raise it to the BGS level. And so that's what we're doing. And so we don't have everything in place yet. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of initiatives that we're working on right now. Communication is one of those things. We have started a newsletter, right? Just an email newsletter that we send out monthly to our organization to let them know our progress on our various DesignOps initiatives, what's going on. We are in the process of designing a website for our organization. Pretty basic, right? One place that everybody can go to get all the information that they need about BGSCX, what we're doing and how we're doing it. So those are two initiatives that are ongoing right now. Training program, effort that I'm leading myself, building a training program for our people, and providing training content, curated content for our folks. So there are a lot of things in the works right now. In terms of research, how we manage and store our research data, that's one of the things that we don't have in place yet, but we've been evaluating options, tools. We want to have a research repository. And so those are, that's going to be a process, because again, getting a new tool approved, that's going to take a long time. So the wheels are turning. We don't have a good solution for that in place yet.
Cool. I mean, yeah, I like that you just highlighted that even just a simple newsletter or something, as simple as a newsletter, is still a way to distribute, insight or share outcomes. So yeah,
so we're trying to be agile about it, right? What can we do immediately? What are the small steps we can take to get something out there, and then build from there as we go.
Okay, last question from Judy.
Sorry, trying to unmute. So hi, Jack. Just
Hi, Judy.
as a follow-up question regarding the corporate buy-in. So besides the cost-benefit analysis, which I'm actually looking it up and it's being really helpful, but I was just wondering, are there any other like qualitative data that has been effective in helping you convey a proposed UX improvement to the internal stakeholders? Say if we can't find any like quantitative data.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, having quotes, actual feedback from users that you can relay to your team. Yeah, hugely helpful.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great. And one last question from me. What are some of the trends that are happening that you foresee in our industry?
Wow, trends in our industry. Okay. Trend specialization is a trend. When I started in my career in UX, you had to know how to do everything because there were very few of us. And we were going into organizations where we were the only one and we had to do everything. Now you're usually going into a team, especially in enterprise. And so you can have a specialization, something that you really focus on. And so we're seeing more of that. We're seeing a lot more of people who only do research and don't have a visual design background, for example, right? So that's a trend. Certainly different technology focuses, right? And that's nothing new. We've seen that all along. But VR, AR, metaverse, all of that sort of stuff, that is definitely trending right now. Things like AI, right? All of these newer technological advances that we're having to learn how to design for, design with. So those are things, even like, blockchain, having an understanding of what the heck that is. So keeping up.
metaverse VR, AR? Like, for example, is Boeing using these to train 3D training?
Yeah, so there are projects going on using AR, VR, even not necessarily VR, but on an iPad, right? Having a virtual panable cockpit, for example, right? Lots of different training applications, but also in the areas of maintenance, and that we're seeing things like VR and AR come into play.
Interesting. And well, it seems like Web3 is gonna, like Web 2 is all 2D and Web 3 is 3D. So would you say there's a shift of skills that's needed?
I don't know that I'd say there's a shift of skills, but there needs to be an awareness and an understanding, right? And if you're interested in getting into an industry where those technologies are important and being used, then yeah, it's going to behoove you to develop some skills and some knowledge in those areas.
Excellent. Okay, finally, okay, we're almost there at 6:30 already. So last two questions is, Jack, what are some of the opportunities? Like, are you guys hiring?
Yeah, we are. We just hired a senior UX designer in Vancouver. That wasn't my hire. That was my boss's hire, Chris Kiley. And we are expecting, it's not a done deal yet, but we're expecting that we'll have another UX design hire, probably low to mid-range experience level in Vancouver coming up soon.
Okay, and how do people reach you?
You can reach me on LinkedIn. You can reach me on Twitter. LinkedIn is probably the easiest.
Okay. Excellent. Okay, thank you. So just search Jack Morfitt on LinkedIn and you'll find him and say hi and tell him that you.
I'm easy to find. I'm on all the things.
Okay, thank you so much, Jack. Okay, Daniel got Jack's LinkedIn for you.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. We learn a lot. It's really, really interesting what you're doing.
Yeah, well, thanks for the opportunity to talk to everybody.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Stay safe.
Bye.
You got it. Yeah. Yay. Have a good night, everyone. Stay safe wherever you are.
Okay.